Yes, usually when I start at companies, I always take who I am and all my years of experience into that company. But I also look at what they value. In Amazon, they have leadership principles that embodies their culture. And so I take myself in there, take a look at what they value, and I try to lift them from those principles and make it work not only for me, but for the people that I lead and for the customers.
It's not a one size fits all leadership model that you have. You really reform based on what the values of the company and the team needs.
It
Um,
is because usually when people hire me, they hire me to take them to the next level. So
yeah.
I don't want to go in there and do what they've always done because then
Yeah.
why would they hire me?
Yeah. Can you give us an example of like an innovation or cultural shift that you've helped effectuate?
Absolutely. Everywhere I go, agile and speed is what I bring in. And so going into last mile, I look at what they are considered the world's best in delivery experience. But then I looked at it and said, how can we scale to the next decade? You've done really well in the first decade, but
Yeah.
now we're going to look at the next decade of scaling. How are you going to do better, especially with the changing landscape of this economy? And so that's what I'm doing for them.
Well, and if you look at like the life cycles of companies, right? If they don't have what you're doing, which is that discipline and focus on innovation, they start to stagnate and then they decline. Have you ever been in, most of the companies you've been in have been, relatively young tech companies, but how do you feel like, can you see when a company's starting to get stuck and stagnate and okay, now it's time, we're gonna lose if we don't get going on this?
Absolutely. When I joined Uber in 2016, they were a rocket ship rising. And
Mhm.
so when I came in, I took a look and did an assessment. I realized, yes, the rocket ship is rising, but let's take a look at your engine because I was leading business platform for them, which is I was the engine of Uber. You can't run an autonomous car without passing through on my platform. And so I needed an assessment. I said, look, you can add new paint job, alloy wheels, tinted windows, but if you don't invest in the foundation, the engine, the car's going to stop running. And the
Yeah.
bells and whistles, it doesn't matter how cool it is.
So you said you're a people first leader and that you start with the leadership structures within the values within a company, but how do you really motivate people? What is your secret sauce? Because you lead big teams.
I do. I one of the things I focus on is getting to know my people and building that trust. And also to understand them. I traveled around the world a lot to be where my people are, to understand the office, the environment, their families, the culture that they live in, to
Yeah.
get that trust. And then we can connect. Because until then, I'm speaking French and they may be speaking, something else. So that's how I begin.
Wow. So how big is your current team? That's a lot of people for you to get to know and really build a trusting relationship with.
My current team is well over 800 people and growing. And they are all over the world. I think there are 26 plus countries,
Yeah.
cities.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yes.
That's very personalized leadership. And of course, we're seeing all over, there's great articles about how women are winning as leaders because of that kind of building trust, really getting to know people and understanding what motivates them. And yet, you just mentioned a challenging time in the environment and the market. Like what is your leadership? How does it show up during challenging times? What does that look like?
I think the first things I have to acknowledge that they are challenging so that people know that I do know,
Yeah.
right? I have to acknowledge that, yes, it is challenging, but then I try to focus my folks on what can we control. But
Yeah.
I realize there's a lot of things not in our control. And yes, I'm going to worry about those, but let's focus on the things we can control. And what are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
And it's always going to be a strategy of short things that we can do, but little midterm things. There's no point looking long term because there's
Yeah.
just too much happening.
Yeah.
And so then the team gets a sense that things are incontrollable, that
Yeah.
they can make changes to it, impact the way they work, the experience for our customers. And it gets people out of the rut of poor me or my gosh, I'm in this tornado I can't get
Yeah.
out of.
It's so simplistic, but if you think about it, like in all parts of life, I even think about like parenting. I know you're a mom, really being able to give people that perspective. I think it's like, all right, I know it's a tough time. This is not fair. And still we got to move forward. So what is one thing you can do today that you can just, that you can control, that you can manage, that you're going to accomplish? Do you have any sort of, do you circle back with people and have any kind of like a ring the bell when those little wins happen? How do you continue to keep people motivated through these times?
I try to have a lot of what I call roundtables where I speak directly to my people without the filtering to the management layers.
Yeah.
I have, breakfast with my, tea time with my, and they're just, virtual office hours, especially during the years when we couldn't travel. So people always know that they hear from me directly and they have
Yeah.
accessibility to a leader who can then understand them and would listen
Yeah.
to them. And
Yeah.
so, those little moments actually matters a lot to people.
They sure do. Like if I feel seen, I'm going to show up differently. That's really important. So, all right. So we just talked about the people side, but let's talk about the productivity side. Like, how do you help people with their prioritization, and how do you drive alignment? How do you get teams where you want them to go?
Well, the first thing is I take a lot of time building relationships with people, not just my own leadership team in my own org, but with my peers and especially my stakeholders. And also, I take the time to learn their business. So it's not like Maya's going to spend your money trying to convince you to build something you may not need. So I really understand their business, their aspiration, how far and big and bold do they want to go? And then I focus on their financials so that no matter what I build from, I tie it back to their bottom line. So they know the value that they're getting and that increases the investment. And it also builds a lot of trust in them as well.
Yeah. So you built this huge toolbox as a leader, and clearly your resume is ridiculously amazing. So when you look back and you think, what were there any aha moments, where you were like, oh, I got to do something different here. This is a learning moment.
Yeah, I think, being customer obsessed and putting customers first,
Yeah.
you get a lot of things wrong. It's because the customers expect you to break the boundaries and look around corners for them. That means you have to be like many, many steps in front of them. And so that requires experimenting, trial and errors. And so just getting my leaders to understand like it's okay to make a mistake because we don't know because we're pushing the boundaries. But at the same time, we also have to acknowledge to our customers when we make the mistakes. So we have to apologize. We're so sorry we did this. Here's the learning lessons we've learned. Here's what we're going to course correct.
Yeah.
And you have to acknowledge that sorry.
You know what, there's no way you knew this when you were 25 years old. How could you? So were there pivotal moments where you hit a wall, or you listened to somebody or read a book, like something that was like, wow, this really changed my trajectory as a leader?
I didn't do it early in my career. Almost the first 20 years of my career, I didn't have mentors.
Oh,
I was me, myself, and I
yeah.
navigating my career. And when I retrospect back, I said, what was I thinking? I now have several really good mentors. People have known me and watched me grow through the years, where they would give me direct, concrete feedback,
Yeah.
also knowing who I am and my experiences.
Yeah.
So I have to say, those are the first mentor I had that I actually could really trust. And
Yeah.
they gave me frank feedback. It
Yeah.
was like, wow, I'm so glad you told me that. No one said that to me all these years.
Oh my goodness. So if you look back and think, like, if you could give yourself, go back in time and give yourself advice as a younger leader, what would you say in those 20 years when you were feeling a little bit like on your own as an island?
I would just say take the time and not just work, work, work. I think that's what I did a lot of in my career. It's like work, 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 heads down. I would tell myself to take the time and network, get those mentors, meet other people, expand,
Yeah.
my network. And
Yeah.
the second thing I would also say is like, be curious and ask lots of questions. I was so busy executing and delivering on my goals and my commitment that I didn't have enough time to ask questions, push the boundaries of the status quo, and not accept the things that I got and received.
Well, you're an engineer, but so I love getting stuff done, right? And I sort of think about, how you're describing this is and there's a lot of data about this, that younger people, but younger women in particular, like produce, and you get rewarded for producing early on. But there comes a moment in your trajectory where you have to pivot. And you have to change how you show up. Like exactly what you just said, you have to network more. You have to have enough spaciousness. You can think about innovation. You can get ahead of it. Think about what my boss and my boss's boss need. If you were to think about sort of at what point in a career is that really essential? Is there a level that you can think about? Is it sort of once you become a manager, a director, a VP? Like when do you feel like that pivot is most important? Because I know you don't get promoted if you can't show that you
Exactly. Yes.
that.
I didn't realize this time, but it actually begin when you become a people manager. Because when you become a people manager, it doesn't matter what level you are in people management, you represent your organization. And the organization is only as strong as their leader. And of course, I didn't realize this years later, but now I retrospect back. But at the same time, though, Julie, every leadership level you rise to is different. So all the skills that you have at one level does not translate to another. So it has to be a lifelong development and learning as a leader in order to rise.